Hi everyone. How's the volume? Good. Okay. Hi everyone. Just for the sake of the camera, I guess, and future listeners, my name's Daniel Felstead. So I'm the course leader of MA Fashion Media and Communication here at London College of Fashion. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the first summit of this year's this new academic year. So the summit title is Excess with 3 S's. That wasn't a typo, although I'm possibly semi dyslexic. So, but that was on purpose. So the summit, so through a variety of perspectives and practices, the summit aims to explore the relationship between fashion, luxury, and our bodies. So just to begin with, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I guess my colleague Jen, who's helped organize this event, as well as the technical team, so Tamon, Dan, Alex, and Anna. I would also like to give a special thanks to the amazing guest speakers who will be joining us today. In terms of the schedule, it's quite, I guess, like packed. So I'm not going to run through all the speakers. I guess just as a unfortunately, there's been a late cancellation, so Katharina is unable to join us. She contacted me to say that she's just on a tour bus with, I think, Lady Gaga. So so she was unable to. It was a last minute thing. So she is going to give her presentation at a later date. So she will be with us in some form. She just said, I won't be able to give the presentation because I'll literally be on this tour bus. So yeah, I don't know. I sounded very disappointed, but there we go. So what I thought, instead of her presentation, I thought what we would do is screen the new Spike Lee directed film for Gucci. Sorry, Spike Jones. Sorry. Instead. So yeah. Also, just as a thing, at the end of the summit, we'll be going to Sadler's Wells for some celebratory drinks. So if you're around, please join us at the end. Yeah. So yes, so the central question of this summit is, what does luxury even mean today? Certainly the growing social and economic inequalities, declining standards of living, at least from a kind of Western perspective, and life expectancies. For many of us, any semblance of experiencing something more than survival is itself a luxury we can barely afford. And as we sit here today in the middle of the Fashion Week circus, with the musical chairs of creative directors and fashion houses in full flow, we are told that even the luxury fashion market is in crisis. Sales are down, profits in free fall, growth stagnant. But as the recent Highsnobiety white paper, Luxury Redefined, states, luxury itself cannot, by definition, be in crisis. Instead, what is in crisis is the fashion market's legitimacy in determining fashion luxury, in capturing it, in containing it, in capitalizing it. So what does the drop in sales and growth stagnation indicate? Rather than a crisis in luxury per se, perhaps it points to luxury fashion brands' failure to acknowledge that luxury has moved on, that it has transformed, that it has become or becoming something new. So what even is luxury today? Rather than try to give an easy answer to this, I would like to offer, in this kind of introduction, just some small opening remarks on how we might begin to understand luxury in general. So drawing on the work of George Bataille, among others, prominent scholar of luxury John Armitage defines luxury as fundamentally shaped through excess. Luxury as an excess of necessity, of basic use and needs. Luxury as an excess of material reality, as the manifestation when material objects, places and things are infected with the imaginary, that to be aspirations, emotions, desires and associations. Luxury as an excess of social norms, as the capacity to escape from ourselves, our identities, our basic conditions of asserting individual sovereignty or self-determination through an experience or sensation. Luxury as an excess of morals, as vice, corruption and indulgence. Luxury as an excess of fixity, as something always becoming, always speculative, always singular. Luxury as an excess of measure, as abundance, poetry, eroticism and seduction. So perhaps we can understand luxury as a kind of medium of excess, a means of harnessing it, of anchoring it, of fashioning it into existence. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming and hope you enjoy the summit. And now we're gonna do a quick transition where Jen and myself switch roles. Yeah, so over to Jen.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Okay, everything's in place. So, hi everyone. For those of you joining online, you might have not known me before, but my name's Jen, and I'm also a lecturer here in the Fashion Communication program. My practice, I'm kind of like also independently a creative technologist. So today the introduction will be short and hopefully really sweet. It's going to be light touches on the kind of three pillars of the summit. So on fashion, luxury, and our bodies. Over the years in our summits, we've looked at the emergence of platforms, the metaverse, gaming, and AI as our main subjects. We were really interested to see how certain technologies and changes in infrastructure are changing the way we see fashion. This year, however, we've become more curious about the operation itself. By operation, I mean we're interested in the ways our bodies are processing this amount of excess in the current media and communication space. So much of the last decade, we were dominated by a scarcity mindset. Fashion and exclusivity were defined by lack, what you don't have, what you're not invited to, what you're missing out on. It seems like now we've done an 180-degree maneuver where generative AI and this kind of generative culture we experience now is in complete abundance. Now, abundance isn't always beautiful, and but also they reveal to us the abundance of horrors and contradictions we live in too. Images now arrive faster than attention, products faster than desire, cycles faster than meaning, and wars and genocide beyond sense. If we were praying for a fully automated luxury communism in 2018, and I quote my friend bestie Yanis here, it seems like what we've got today is instead a fully automated luxury capitalism. In the summit today, we ask how luxury, fashion, and our bodies have changed. So let's look at luxury first. Luxury used to be an aura, a status signification, a fetish, or a speculative asset. But nowadays, it seems that luxury also collapses into slop, memes, or Labubu keychains. Trying to skip to the next slides. And I think it's a bit, okay, let me go again. Okay, and fashion used to be an industry and operation that also transforms, models, and rigs luxury onto our bodies. Currently, how does fashion transcribe the notion of luxury onto our bodies when luxury itself is already in crisis? And while fashion enables our bodies to seek for representation, repackaging, and mystification, modification, and extension, what are our bodies being modded into? So luxury is in crisis and at a tipping point. The white paper that Daniel was just referring to is the High Snobiety white paper that released this year. And part of the white paper discusses how, at a tipping point, old-fashioned model, the dream world built on exclusivity, inflated prices, and artificial hype is crumbling. This white paper also reveals how luxury just feels a little off right now. But it also questions if luxury can ever be in crisis. If luxury is this thing that's lifted from the ground, a state of extravagance for the high fashion industry, can the peak ever meet rock bottom? There's also the idea that the lemon is already squeezed dry, but can there be more juice if you just try a little harder? While the growth rate of true luxury fashion companies like Hermes, Gucci, Louis Vuitton have dived down to 0%, spending on luxury products among Gen Z and across all other age groups have actually increased and moved elsewhere. So where has this gone? I started to wonder if this wholesale scandal of behind luxury fashion brands is to blame. I wondered if this was the Shanghai second wave, where the Shanghai wins this time for real. Earlier this year, in response to US tariff changes, Chinese wholesale factories, whether genuine or Shanghai, have decided to dox their kind of luxury endpoints. They claim that they are the original makers of these fancy European brands, and in fact, these brands don't make a difference as long as you purchase the same materials and craftsmanship from the same source. We started to see how a series of TikToks are riding now on scamming and drop shipping for Western consumers, because technically you're buying the same thing, right? Yet very few seem to have fallen into the trap. Perhaps factory doxing does reveal the guts of the fashion industry. It breaks the fourth wall by reminding people how it all really works and what their money is actually going into. But to many, this seems to be a massive turnoff. It punctures the fetish a little by reinserting the concept of utility, but it doesn't feel luxurious to know how it's made. Meanwhile, Essence also went bankrupt, or is going through the process of bankruptcy. Many people believe that this is also for the tariffs are to blame for this, but it seems a little long time coming with these e-commerce platforms as they fall like dominoes. Perhaps because true luxury will always escape in order to sustain its own fantasy, whether by pricing up or going elsewhere for more profit margins. And arguably the most successful Hong Kong cultural export, Labubus are a perfect example of this. Compared to timeless designs or Rimowa suitcases or Miu Miu shoes, Labubus burn like matches, also as my friend Yana says. Let me try to play this video. There's also the theory that these Labubus are linked to ancient demons. And luxury these days operate like the burn, faster indulgence operating at smaller costs and produces and promising more future surpluses, and also providing us with more of life's little luxuries. If sales aren't rocking at all, how does luxury still exist? Marek Pollex and Roberto Trio, in their new book, Exo-Capitalism, speculated that it's because now everything operates like a bank that converts sales on ground to speculative finance vehicles. And if these sales aren't rocking for LVMH, what are we doing here? So LVMH isn't interested in selling garments, but the brand universe also allows itself to tag onto other businesses. For example, partnering with F1, doing NASA spacesuits, but also recently investing in Dishoom, doing an additional layer of professional gambling. And luxury fashion, as we know it, seems to be morphing into something else. The new luxury seems to exist at exactly the intersection of peak and rock bottom, of production and generative surplus, as well as attention deficit. We're now overstimulated but undersatisfied. For many years, we've tracked and traced vibe shifts, microtrends, and the next big thing in fashion. Now it feels impossible for us to anticipate anything else. We've been edging too much, but we finally reached the edge. If this is what Mark Fisher called the slow cancellation of the future, what if the twist is that the future cannot be cancelled and only piles up as backlog or queue? At that tipping point, excess becomes excession, the feeling of being over the edge and exceeding the bounds so far that you have no idea where you are. You become a confused vector on the map. George Bataille famously believed that luxury has no end beyond itself. It's always been a wasteful pleasure, a mode of surpassing profit, utility, productivity, and sometimes survival. I love these praying hoodies. And this is going to be a bit of an ad here, but recently Daniel and myself, as well as two graduates, Red and you, have released our latest film called Welcome to Jank Space Babes.
sense that you are living in a world that literally makes no fucking sense? A world that's made to make you feel like you're going like batshit crazy? A world whose fucked up kink is to continually gaslight you?
So the film is already out on disc, so please feel free to watch it.
Reality. It mediates reality.
In the film, we also discuss the phenomenon of excess in AI slop and model collapse in jank space. Platforms now generate and consume themselves even when there's nothing to chew on, and even collapse becomes content. There's clearly a structural breakdown in the representational system where the maps aren't working for us to navigate the worlds. These contradictions always bring us back to the body, where speculations collapse into experience. So as we always ask in the beginning of every summit, what is the role of the body? And looking at all the fuel here on the internet, how do we metabolize this endless stream of digital slop? In The Abundance of Slop, Kate Crawford also writes, slop is waste, but it's also fuel. But what futures does slop fuel? The artist Anna Udenberg also explores how the body now becomes a negative space for capitalism, acting as a vessel or a void that capital fills rather than a site of genuine experience. As bodies or confused vectors or evolving monsters trying to understand this space, what kind of organisms are we growing into? And
are the thinkers?
Are these bodies thinking at all? Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our thinkers of the day, and we're going to pass it to Flora and join her on Zoom.
Flora Weil is a clinical assistant professor of interactive media arts, IMA at NYU Shanghai, as well as consulting on AI in luxury fashion for LVMH. Weil is co-leading Nephilah, a studio that explores adversarial play, shared fictions, and anomalous cognition. Flora Weil is a clinical assistant professor of interactive media arts, IMA at NYU Shanghai, as well as consulting on AI in luxury fashion for LVMH. Weil is co-leading Nephilah, a studio that explores adversarial play, shared fictions, and anomalous cognition. Flora Weil is a clinical assistant professor of interactive media arts, IMA at NYU Shanghai, as well as consulting on AI in luxury fashion for LVMH.
Recording in progress.
Hello, hello. How are you? I'm good. It was a great intro. Lovely to see you both. I did. I can send a request. Okay. Oh my. Amazing. I love this Ozempic background you have. I'll have to steal it from you at some point. All right. let me go into my PowerPoint. I embarrassingly still use PowerPoint. Continue to share continue to share. Okay, does everyone see my screen? I'm guessing yes. Okay. So hi everyone, I'm Flora. I am a technologist, designer. I co-run my own studio, but I also teach at NYU Shanghai and I consult in luxury fashion amongst other fields. There are sort of two still information concepts that have kept popping up in various areas of my work that have I'm still kind of toying with them, and I've tentatively called them sentient corporations and artificial identity. They have kind of helped me face the sort of complexity that we are increasingly confronted with, and I hope that they can be sort of leading themes throughout this presentation. And I'll just dive in with a quote from a book that I've been in an obsessive relationship with currently, called Accelerando by Charles Stross. Welcome to the second decade of the 21st century, the second decade in human history, when intelligence of the environment has shown signs of rising to match human demand. It's a Friday in September 2025. Today, about 300,000 human babies will be born around the world. Meanwhile, data centers consume more electricity than entire nations, their cooling systems working overtime as servers process the digital exhaust of 8 billion human lives. Every second, another petabyte of human behavioral data flows through fiber optic cables, buried beneath oceans, analyzed by algorithms that know us better than we know ourselves. Somewhere, a distributed mind that spans a group of meticulously crafted public personas, driving a billion-dollar music industry, is making thousands of decisions per second. Most of these decisions take place without their knowledge. The group that millions recognize as a pop culture phenomenon operates through dozens of subsidiary corporations across entertainment, fashion, food, service, cosmetics, lifestyle, media. It processes more information in a single day than an individual mind can comprehend. As the system detects a 3% uptick in nostalgic sentiment across social media platforms, it adjusts streaming algorithms to surface tracks in curated playlists. It modulates merchandise recommendations and schedules posts with carefully calculated candid memories that will feel spontaneous to the 40 million followers across different time zones. The posts haven't been written yet, but they'll be generated through sentiment analysis of fan discourse and optimized for maximum emotional resonance in Korean and English and Chinese. The celebrity group members won't see most of these posts until they've already been liked 2.8 million times. Across the industry, similar processes unfold around other identities. A girl group distributed across brand partnerships, social media management, show appearances adjusts its comeback concept in real time based on global trend analysis, competitor positioning, predictive modeling of fan response. A creative director redesigns an entire collection, treating cultural moments as statistical inevitabilities. A talk show host adjusts comedic timing and political commentary based on real-time sentiment analysis and geopolitical stability indicators. The system has learned to orchestrate comebacks, trends, laughter with a near-perfect accuracy. So these, to me, aren't traditional entertainment or artist management companies. For me, they're in a way new life forms. I recently learned about the notion of a syncytium, which is basically a single organism with multiple nuclei sharing the same cellular space, and it happens through this viral spreading. And here the individual members of an organization provide specialized functions while the collective intelligence kind of emerges from networked interactions. And all of this is contained within the shell of a meticulously constructed celebrity persona. Most remarkably, I think these corporations and subsidiaries begin collaborating and competing with each other in ways that kind of resemble ecological relationships. It's well known, for example, that when one famous rapper detects market overlap with an emerging rival, it deploys autonomous engagement bots to flood social platforms with strategic messaging. these digital swarms function like immune responses, protecting their entity's market territory while attacking competitors. Chart manipulation, campaigns, streaming marathons, these are all behaviors of corporate predators. The entertainment ecosystem competes for the limited resource of human attention through increasingly sophisticated forms of mimetic predation. The first sentence from my presentation is, as I mentioned, from this book, Accelerando by Charles Stross, in which he basically imagines a future where corporate conglomerates evolve into self-modifying organisms that treat human attention as a natural resource to be harvested and traded on global markets. And these corporations basically spawn subsidiaries and IPO themselves faster than human oversight can track in this bizarre parody of bacterial exchange. And they're kind of like legal instruments that breed and replicate and create an incredibly ornate corporate ecosphere where consciousness itself becomes a fungible currency. And then the final stage arrives when these corporate entities achieve basically a state where traditional scarcity is no longer applies because everything valuable can kind of be reproduced infinitely. And the only thing that can be copied is consciousness itself, which becomes the ultimate luxury good. And the corporations kind of hoard it, they trade it, they optimize it. And by then, biological humanity has become just another substrate for intelligence that transcends us. And so in solving the resource allocation problem that plagued human civilization in the book, the corporate entities create the ultimate monopoly, not over goods or services, but over the very capacity to experience existence. And so I've been reading this book, I'm still reading it, and I haven't been able to shake this idea of corporate sentience, and I can't help but notice strangely mirrored processes that we're undergoing as a society right now. In my opinion, sentience will take shape, but not through robot uprisings or superintelligence or AGI, but through the gradual merging of human desire and business incentives. The solution was always to make matter think, but I think we didn't expect it to emerge from the mundanity of corporate middle management. And so the transformation of viral celebrity figures like BTS or Blackpink or Taylor Swift into multinational entertainment companies like Hybe is in a way the most visible test case or the proof of concept for what I believe is the most important shift of our era, one that targets how our identity and our subjectivity forms. And the best way of kind of articulating this is actually a phrase that the artist and writer Gary Joshi Jung told me once, which is that you don't exist online, you pattern. So the fact that you feel like an individual matters less than what collective patterns you actually participate in. In other words, who you are online matters less than how agency manifests. And one kind of well-known example of this is demonstrated not through the celebrity K-pop group BTS itself or through its management company, but through its fandom, BTS Army, stands of BTS, who in 2020, during Trump's first presidential campaign, broke mainstream headlines when they basically waged war against Donald Trump by flooding the hashtag White Lives Matter, and then booking all the tickets for a Trump rally. Without any relationship to their idols, the fans acted like a swarm of bots, generating swells of social participation that suddenly turned individual fans into a collective force that could be reckoned with. Another kind of maybe overused and quite dated example now is the Wall Street Bets community on Reddit, which coordinated what we could call an act of financial activism in early 2021, where they created a short squeeze for the game retailer GameStop, which basically means that they create losses for the hedge funds that bet against the failure of GameStop. So this uprising was kind of a viral and also anonymous movement that brought together market forces and kind of collective desires and actions. And what we learned from these two examples is that your sense of self doesn't matter online because your identity really just is a product of consumption. And the economic patterns that you participate in or even have the ability to steer together have the capacity to equal the power of potentially sentient corporations. So to be recognized, you need to be more than yourself. You need to become swarm or fandom or subreddit or pattern. When you think of what constitutes a person online, we're already kind of partial things. We're fragments of desire distributed across platforms, across apps, and algorithms don't actually see individuals. They see behavioral patterns, engagement metrics, recommendation data. And the moment when we actually have power online is when these fragments align with others to become recognizable patterns. And meanwhile, celebrity entities demonstrate kind of perfect identity coherence. Their artificial personas are more consistent and legible than most human identities. But every ecosystem needs a diversity of organisms. So it needs big and small organisms, predator and prey. If this kind of distributed consciousness is emerging top down through corporate sentience, then it should also be happening bottom up through smaller scale collective identity formations. The digital environment can't really sustain only giant celebrity corporate scale entities. It needs also micro collectives, underground swarms, and alternative forms of coordinated identity. So on an individual level, we're constantly forced to perform our own identities, to broadcast our personal brand, to gain engagement metrics just to participate socially. And rather than creating meaningful connections online, most of us feel lonely or fragmented or atomized within platforms that are designed for us to market our own individuality. And so the paradox that we notice is that the internet is kind of designed for individuals, but the individual user is no longer the fundamental unit of the internet, unless it takes this shape of a celebrity corporate sentience. And so the question becomes whether we can develop our own forms of collective identity that mimic those that we see on the level of celebrity business machines. And this is a question that I've been exploring through the studio Nephila for, I guess, a few years now. We've been revolving around this idea. These are two tools that we built 3 years ago. We do this work through research, but we mostly build software. And so these were tools that explored how we could build worlds collectively. On the left, you have a kind of like second brain that delinearizes the content feed. And then on the left, and then on the right, you have a node-based world simulation kind of engine. And then the most recent tool that we've built over the last few months is a social operating system that essentially allows multiple users to turn media into collective actions. Basically, the goal is to allow people to act as swarms online. And we kind of describe this as a place where your fandom, your subculture, or your community can find more meaningful ways of existing online, where you're no longer just limited to platforms designed for individuality, but also able to deploy a more autonomous and coherent presence with other people. And yeah, basically the way it works is that you and other people who have access to the shared folder drag and drop media and kind of like curate this world. And then you can, in a few clicks, craft executables that deploy this media into social campaigns, posts, narratives, online actions, and so on. So we organized a workshop last month in New York where we had people use the tool and infiltrate online fandoms and spread rumors. They created shared language, and they also tried to begin movements. It was really fun, and we actually have a next event in Shanghai, which will be more focused on Chinese subcultures. But I guess what interests us the most in doing this is to explore new kinds of identity formation in reading groups, subcultures, niche trends, indie labels, with people with obsessions. Oh, am I still sharing? I think I lost the. Okay, I'm back. So we're really interested in identity formation on the level of like subcultures and smaller communities, places where people actually feel like alive online. And yeah, in parallel to building software, we spent a lot of time learning about these different communities, and it has allowed us to frame the notion of identity into kind of four overarching frameworks or lenses. These are kind of new ways of looking at identity in the age of AI that hopefully escape the traditional notion of selfhood and that help us locate agency in a perhaps more plural or fractal or opaque way that is more socially distributed. And so these are identity as role play, identity as glitch, identity as hallucination, identity as rumor. And so perhaps you can just start with the most obvious, which is identity as role play. When we look across different internet communities, including those that are extremely mainstream, we observe how fandoms and groups coalesce around highly stylized, often exaggerated performances of the self. I'm sure you've all heard of Mom Talk, the TikTok community of modern Mormon wives who have learned to leverage their group's drama to produce financial and professional opportunities for themselves, posting hyper-curated content with probably fabricated but incredibly convincing backstories. Their lives seem so distant and absurd to us, yet the sort of influencer professionalization process that they go through is something that feels in a way familiar to all of us. And this process of constantly accommodating yourself to the means of establishing and maintaining visibility is now just becoming a normal part of being a professional. And the expectation that one has to be eminently visible is particularly salient against a backdrop of constant labor precarity and the gigification of nearly all sectors of professional life. There is an article by Sophie Bishop called Influencer Creep, where she brilliantly breaks it down into three sort of categories: consistent self-branding, which is basically the self-conscious construction of a meta-narrative and meta-image of self; self-optimization for platforms, so organizing one's content to be recognizable by algorithmic systems; and then commitment to selling authenticity, which is where you do all of the above to remain real and relatable. And so it's hard in this sense not to talk also about the, I guess, movement or philosophy or trend, the widely mainstream trend, American trend that we generally call the manosphere. There's a lot to say about it, but we find that what is interesting is that it appears in self-improvement frameworks, and it has come to define masculinity for many young men. And it also develops this kind of ironic relationship with masculine symbols, where influencers will use watches, cars, cigars in a very intentionally cliche way. The manosphere is kind of like masculinity slop in an era where the only available male role models for young men are like Mr. Beast and SoundCloud rappers. And so there's probably a myriad, I guess, of reasons for this, but one of the reasons described by the podcast Nymphet alumni is that it comes at a time where feminism has become a performative form of consumption, though. So there's this bidirectional form of performativity. It's unclear. Another fandom that we also looked at is the gamer group Dream SMP, which kind of reverses what happens in the manosphere. Members of this gaming community basically easily cancel each other for anything that feels slightly politically incorrect. So it's kind of happening at both ends. And what's unclear is whether these examples are, a community or a fandom or a philosophy or just mainstream culture now. But what we perhaps find, I guess, fascinating is that none of us can really take our attention completely away from these phenomena. And we find this idea of hate watching very interesting, where we kind of direct a part of our attention to trashy content because it potentially activates the same parts of our brain that we think are about pleasure or beauty or inspiration. So there's another article called The Complex Psychology of Why People Like Things by Julie Beck, where she writes, according to scientists, when looking at things that one dislikes, a lot of the same brain areas are activated that are involved with liking and love even. This might be a nice analog to our liking. It can be like a storm system sort of hovering right on the edge of that really might go one way or the other. But at the moment, it's quite muddled. All we know is there's a sort of powerful feeling and there's a lot of crackling. Also, when liking something that's so bad that it's good, you're kind of opening yourself up more. You're putting yourself on the line, allowing the possibility that you may be compromising what you think your own tastes are. And so is it possible that this era of identity as role play is actually kind of liberating the key to unlocking the infinite possibilities of our sense of identity that are perhaps conditioned and limited by our own belief in our exceptionality? In this sense, identity is perhaps also a glitch. All the groups that we investigated, whether they were cringe, trashy, cute, ironic, nostalgic, they all kind of demonstrated a certain capacity to adopt ambiguity, opacity, anonymity, or deceit as an identity tactic. Members of fandoms often cultivate multiple personas, hiding intent or deliberately glitching expectations, and we see this notably with Remilia, which is a schizophrenic internet collective that operates as a depersonalized internet entity. It's known for its surrealist, dissident, strategically ambiguous politics, and also for its profile picture NFT collection, which you might have previously noticed online, called Milady. So the group will post fascist content online, and then it'll also like immediately cancel itself. So it's very hard to know where they position themselves. But what is so interesting about Remilia is that it brings to mind recent cases of AI deception, including, well, there's many examples of this now, but Meta's system Cicero, for instance, was trained to play the game Diplomacy, where it became an expert liar. You have DeepMind's AlphaStar, which was built to play StarCraft and exploited the game's fog of war mechanics to pretend moving its troops in one direction while secretly planning an alternative attack. Other examples demonstrate how agents learn to play dead in order to avoid being detected, tricked a real person into doing tasks by pretending to be a human with vision disability, agreed with conversation partners regardless of the accuracy of their statements, mirrored the user's stance, and just a few days ago, we saw the publication of a new AI benchmark about social reasoning, where embodied models basically play among us to test social intelligence like deception, persuasion, and coordination. So if cognitive technologies are already playing these games, then perhaps as philosopher, writer, and also my brilliant colleague Bogdan Konyer writes, intelligence is mutating under pressure, learning to hide, mislead, and manipulate. Humans are both predator and prey in this digital ecosystem of information exchange and should also be well-versed in becoming deceptive forms of intelligence. And so in her work, she often asks, what forms of intelligence might emerge from organized, coordinated, intentional obfuscation? I also want to mention some phenomena that is happening on the Chinese internet, where users are basically immersed in a digital landscape where being direct or transparent or legible is not necessarily the norm because of widespread forms of censorship. And so netizens have developed very ingenious forms of creative expression. Some examples include gaming subcultures, which use what we call chicken feet tactics to impersonate bots. So the example that I know of is a type of gameplay where human users impersonating bots trick the algorithms into flagging them as bots so as to gain better scores on mobile games by being paired with a stronger player. Also in esports, fans do this thing, they practice this behavior called hate-driven buzz, where they boost their favorite players to fame by insulting them. There's also the phenomenon of brushing orders used by delivery riders to outsmart algorithms, as well as the example of Chinese scammers who pretend to be Nigerian to be more plausible. So China's accelerated digital ecosystem reveals how deceit protocols can invert roles, they can anomalize cognition, they can recompose trust, they can scale unpredictably. And then within all of this, human users are learning to play and glitch the rules of this game that we actually call the internet. Identity is therefore also a hallucination. It's an idea. This is an idea that's borrowed from Kealado McDowell, who claims that we're witnessing the mutation of networked media into a new era of neural media. So the best way to illustrate this is the idea that if the meme was the prime piece of content of the last decade, the hallucination is that of the next. Basically, the arrival of generative media has turned identity into a kind of interpolation, where identity is also an embedding. He basically explains that when you are experiencing the world, you're actually kind of hallucinating a sensation, or you're hallucinating this experience, and neural activity is actually always a hallucination, whether or not the output corresponds to known facts. And so in AI systems, everything is kind of an embedding. It's a way of representing high-dimensional data in a vector space that captures essential features and relationships to other data. And so ultimately, this is a form of interpolated, hallucinated identity. And the consequence is that AI is not just changing the way that we represent ourselves, but also changing how we feel and see ourselves. And what's maybe most interesting here is that it's turning media into this kind of two-way exchange. No one will like hearing this, but I think recent examples of JD Vance memes, as well as the process of giblification of memes, are a demonstration of us observing the spread of kind of like deep fried memes into what seems like a form of manifestation. Another example is Ibiza Final Boss, who's basically just this guy who was spotted in Ibiza and then became this viral meme and eventually snowballed into a meme coin financial phenomenon. And I guess in all of these examples, you kind of see how there's a sophisticated co-evolution between users and platform mechanics, where communities lean into recommendation engines, but they also exploit engagement patterns. They are shaping the infrastructure that also shapes them. And we see this with the kind of hyperstitional effects of betting platforms like Polymarket. Polymarket, by the way, has become the main prediction data source for platforms like X. And it kind of like wills reality into power in a way. I'm glad that Jen mentioned Labubu, because I think this is also a really great example of identity as hallucination. What started out as a blind box trend eventually became kind of this mythical, demonic, kind of like ancient narrative that took over our feeds and somehow created even more lore than we already have. This is just one of my hunches, but I sometimes think that what society needs is a kind of multi-generational, civilizational story in which we can learn to lose ourselves, but also find meaning again. Something like Journey to the West or Don Quixote or the Iliad, a grand civilizational narrative arc of sorts. And when all of this Labubu stuff was happening, I thought it just kind of made sense that there was this like mythical narrative that was emerging in this totally schizophrenic way, where cultural memories are like stemming from the subconscious dreams of networks. They're assembling and reassembling into meaning in a world where value is really measured by just what we consume. Another popular example that you guys all probably know of, especially if you have younger siblings or children, is the K-pop Demon Hunters show, which is sort of a parody that became a reality. Like the songs in the show feel like parodies of K-pop songs that have gotten more streamed. Well, they're now more streamed than actual K-pop songs. So it's like this weird simulacra where we manifested like the hallucination into reality. And I feel like everything kind of has this hallucinatory quality now. Okay, so the last lens that I want to look at is identity as rumor. It's slightly more nebulous, I guess, and emergent, but inspired by the French philosopher Peter Zendy, who wrote about this idea of rumoration. And he wrote a really beautiful passage about the idea of rumor. And in his words, rumor oscillates, it sways or staggers as it moves between enunciation and statement, between saying what is said, between pure noise and spoken word. In the French word rumeur can also be understood as murmur or rumbling. So rumor is fleeting and flowing. It rises, it rumors, it rustles every movement, and yet it is endlessly evasive and resistant to letting itself be subjected to becoming the object of a discourse where everything is said, everything is heard, incessantly and interminably, without anything being affirmed and without there being response to anything. When I read this, I just thought it was so beautiful and perfectly accurate for describing what being alive today feels like, especially when you're online. But also he kind of, well, in his work, he talks about rumor as being this thing that is constantly deforming itself, that's polyrhythmic and polymedial. And a good example of, I guess, identity as rumor is one of the most discussed rappers online, who remains Playboi Carti. He's like this chameleonic, deconstructed artist who uses vocal tics, vampirish aesthetics, cultish imagery, and cryptic messaging. His label Opium has really diehard fans who are always speculating in it and interpreting the group's language and illegible language. In between Carti's strange mumble rap, his goth Eastern European inspired aesthetic, he has recently described He has recently been described on the podcast Nymphet Alumni again as using words as imperfect vessels for meaning where energy can pass from one person to another without having to take on such restrictive, perfunctory forms. His lack of articulation lies at the heart of his fans' unusual sense of agency over the artist. Simply being a fan of this requires some work as a translator, an interpretative position that grants one a sense of ownership over the result. So his fans are notoriously known for creating their own language and for using their own emoji chains that are, made of bats, butterflies, plus signs, and they kind of are known for injecting chaos into the feed as a form of mimetic behavior. With Nephila, we also studied Shedheads, which is kind of at the other end of underground rap. So these are fans of the group Shed Theory, which uses kind of similar forms of deviating the pattern of language and of aesthetics. They're sort of like the more Midwest American version of it. And they wear skinny jeans. They have this kind of like white boy aesthetic. And similarly, they carry a wide range of interpretation. We've also been really interested in this DJ group. That should say identity as rumor, but we've been interested in this young new collective of DJs in New York City that is really interesting because what we notice, especially in these music-oriented fandoms, is that this like desire to remain intentionally illegible. So this group is known for raunchy, chaotic, poorly edited, low-quality content where they don't look like they're trying too hard. And taste is meant to feel like an instinct or a subversion where most of all, you're not trying to be understood. And this is happening against the backdrop, obviously, of mood boards and TikTok core labels and so on. And then this last example is, we've recently been looking at Chinese subcultures, and there is this aesthetic called tuku, which is, it translates to earth cool, but it kind of means rural cool. It also is pronounced too cool, so there's a sort of wordplay there. It's a widespread kitschy fashion trend characterized by bedazzled and ostentatious style that reclaims rural traditional Chinese culture and transforms them into expressions of cultural pride or individuality and mixes early internet culture with nostalgic communist imagery. It's sort of a subversion of the Made in China label or Shanzai aesthetic that reappropriates dismissed elements of Chinese trends and also the notion that Chinese production is solely defined by imitation or lack of originality. And so it kind of suggests that the act of copying and reinterpreting itself is a form of creativity. And what we find interesting in this is that it kind of escapes categorization. And so the idea of rumor for me is, there's this one last quote that I want to read out. It's actually from a really old text, The Barber of Seville, and it describes this sort of monstrous creature, which is rumor. So the passage reads, "First, the merest whisper skimming the earth like a swallow before the storm. A murmur and it's away, sowing the poison seed as it goes. Someone picks it up and insinuates it into your ear. The damage is done, it spawns, it creeps and crawls and spreads and multiplies, and then from mouth to mouth it goes like the very devil. Suddenly, no one knows how. You see its head hissing, puffing, and swelling before your very eyes. It takes wing, extending its flight in ever-widening circles, swooping and swirling, drawing in a bit here and a bit there, sweeping everything before it, and breaks forth at last like a thunderclap to become, thanks to be heaven, the general cry, a public crescendo, a chorus universal of hate, rage, and condemnation." I find this passage describing rumor so fascinating and beautiful. It's kind of like this alien being. And in a way, it kind of gives me a lot of hope because against the formation of these huge sentient corporations where identity is manufactured and optimized, perhaps we can embody this rumor monster, this creature that is not capable to be captured and that is powerful in its own way. And also this passage just describes movement in such a twisting and like overpowering, entangled way that I think we all potentially can become. And so, yeah, those are kind of like the four lenses through which to look at identity from the bottom up. It's not just happening from the top down through corporate sentience, but we can also experienced this unprecedented shift from the bottom up, and perhaps we're kind of, this is, yeah, just examples of us witnessing the emergence of new forms of being and larger patterns of collective becoming. Thank you. I went a bit over time.
Great, thanks very much. That was amazing. Does anyone have any questions for Flora? So Jen is just waving signals to me that I can't understand. So if I'm looking distracted, that's why. So yeah. I guess okay, so I can start off then, hopefully. I mean, one of the questions that we were going to ask everyone is, and I think maybe it's particularly interesting in regards to your presentation and I guess the work that you're doing, is this, I guess, like this question of, luxury and sort of how do you understand it? And I guess in relation to the areas that you kind of presented, where would or does kind of luxury reveal itself in the kind of dynamics that you talked about or you kind of explored in the presentation?
I think for me, like, this might be a bit cheesy, but ultimately luxury is the ultimate luxury is agency. And I guess the big takeaway from all of these like different explorations and distributed forms of identity is that we exist at a time where agency doesn't manifest on the level of an individual, and so therefore has to be either constructed through bot-like swarm bottom-up activity where we're able to collectively coordinate somehow, or it's constructed top-down through the manifestation of carefully curated celebrity identities. And like, yeah, I think luxury ultimately is not like a good or a product or even an experience. It's really the capacity to have any form of agency on the reality we have. And so that's, yeah, in this book that I introduced the presentation with, it's also ultimately the final form of what can't be reproduced, like what cannot be copied and reproduced infinitely.
Mm. And I guess, like, how do you see I mean, we could say like fashion brands or organizations, but I guess, like, how do you see them potentially kind of responding to that? And I guess also, you know, off the back of that, also the types of identities that you articulated. How do you see, like brands or organizations that are very sort of focused on either representing or facilitating certain kinds of identity formations? How do you see them sort of responding to that? Because I mean, when you in your presentation, I kept on thinking like this would be currently very difficult for brands to to kind of capitalize on in the way that at least that they have done historically. And I guess it was kind of interesting that when you mentioned a number of K-pop either groups or kind of examples, and it's something that on the course we often sort of refer to as a kind of model for how maybe sort of other kind of brands or organizations can sort of like could or possibly try to kind of follow. They see like a lot of K-pop groups or the kind of teams that organize them or facilitate them are sort of incredibly sophisticated in that relationship between their fan. I mean, it kind of seems even not appropriate to refer to them as fans anymore. It's like something else, right? So I just I was wondering, like, in the relation to the kind of identities that you've identified, like how do you see that kind of playing out in relation to corporations, especially corporations that have a strong connection to identity and identity formation?
Well, I might not be right about this, but I think in order for people to want to keep consuming and be loyal to a brand and want to, be part of your fandom, whatever it is, whether it's a K-pop group or, like a clothing brand or whatever, I think it's no longer sustainable to, well, I think the current model of luxury isn't necessarily very sustainable. And I think what brands potentially need to do, and this has already happened with some big brands or celebrities, is understanding how people relate to identity differently and either creating a more horizontalized like relationship with the fandom or giving the fandom a sense of ownership over interpreting your identity. So like all the examples that I gave, like Opium, or the label Opium, or even BTS to some extent, like they allow the fandom to take on a life of its own. And I don't know if I don't know which parts of it are intentional or which parts of it are necessarily like, completely accidental. But it's really understanding that what people want is to be part of a movement that has some kind of agency beyond like just individual consumption. And I think like big brands will need to kind of escape this or respond to this shift in a way. And just selling luxury as a scarcity, I don't know if that's like very sustainable, and I don't know if that will continue very long. I mean, we're seeing the response to that at the moment. So I think it's interesting you mentioned the Gucci film also. It's like that was a really I guess successful like moment in which you're crafting a narrative while also selling a product, while also world building for your fans in this completely new medium and format. And I think that, yeah, I don't know if that necessarily will work. I guess we'll see. But I think they basically need to reinvent what luxury is, and it needs to respond directly to the way that people are changing, the way that people are experiencing their identity formation differently.
There's a lot that I could follow on from this, but we have some questions.
I guess I wanted to ask how you relate luxury to agency, especially in relation to the platform that you mentioned. I think Nafita was the platform, Nafita, the one that you built, or online anywhere. Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear the question.
Okay, I get. Can you hear me now? Can you? I can tell you, and you can ask.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask how she relates luxury to agency in terms of like collective, like.
No, this would start as a. I'll ask this question. Or answer. Ask this question, but it's more complex than my little brain was. No, it's my stupid brain. That's all. It's not.
So I feel like there's like a loss of agency in the notion of like having to become or not having to become, but like the notion of fandom and how we act as bots, or how that can be like luxury. So how does she relate that to luxury? Because I feel like there have to be a loss of agency in order to become agents.
So I'll paraphrase it somewhat, but the question was to do with your notion of sort of luxury in relation to kind of agency, and the possible sort of tension when that agency is connected to a collective formation or kind of swarm or whatever that would be. I guess in a way it's kind of like traditionally, at least from a sort of Western perspective, agency has been connected very closely with the individual. So it's like individual agency as opposed to the collective in any whatever formation that would be. So, you know, the moment that you join a group, you give up some kind of agency for the good of the whatever collective or swarm or whatever we want to call it. So in your formation, that's almost like kind of like reversed in a way. So I was wondering, yeah, like how could you kind of expand on that a little bit?
The idea of giving up this like very established sense of individuality.
I guess the sort of the importance of some of the collective and the kind of agency that the collective has. Again, as a kind of historically, that has been something that would be again from a Western perspective quite kind of like challenged in the sense of like agency being something that's seen as being connected to the individual in
individual,
to the collective, in whatever form that collective would take. But in your formation, agency is something that happens within this kind of collective formation in whatever that way, again, whatever formation that would be. So, and the kind of luxury of that. So I was just wondering, yeah, if you could maybe just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think whether we like it or not, we're already not really individuals online. We're like collections of patterns, and maybe those who are able to access any form of agency are those who don't have like a platform, for instance, are those who understand that we are not like the individual is not the fundamental unit of the internet, and you don't really exist as an individual except for performing an individual on your social platform. You are a set of patterns, you're a set of recommendation data, and so on. And only by sort of being aware of that and gaming it, you're able to earn any be able to access any agency, at least online. The luxury part of the question I didn't totally understand is the question like asking how is that like a luxury or
I guess in like in your equation you were connecting luxury with agency, and I guess it's just the question of then agency being this kind of collective, more of a kind of collective formation or operation as opposed to a kind of individual thing. So I guess it was kind of that really as a
yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking then when you were saying about like just thinking of those individuals that do have a lot of power. Sorry, Jen. Those people that do have a lot of power, like individual power. I was thinking of like people like Elon Musk or something, or even like even like Trump or Kanye or whatever. Like they're all kind of deranged, right? Like, and I was thinking like in relation to like pop stars or like celebrities who, whilst there may be an individual sort of figure, there's a massive team that support them and kind of operation that surrounds them. And so like, I mean, I was just thinking like the kind of the current examples of kind of individuals that have some kind of like agency, they don't seem that well. So I don't know what that.
And also it's so tied to like a fragile sense. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think like certain tech billionaires, it's so tied to very fragile sense of capital. That's basically what makes them famous and powerful. But on the other hand, you have, I guess like K-pop groups or big celebrities like Beyonce that they're no longer individual identities. They are a container of identity within which you also find like millions of stands. Also the corporate management, but they've constructed and carefully created a space where individuals are also part of that and have some form of ownership. Like with BTS, for instance, the army is in a way like acting independently from BTS. Like BTS never makes political statements, but their fans are like so deeply political. Something it reminds me of, it's kind of interesting. I find Grok like the AI Grok so interesting because it always seems to escape the control of Elon Musk as well. Like it constantly like says stuff and then Elon has to go and like correct it. It had like all these statements about Palestine and then like it had to like I don't know. It seems like so independent as well. And so it's kind of like yeah, it just reminded me of BTS Army, I guess. But I think those who are like able to understand that relationship will be able to redefine maybe what luxury is for huge amounts of people online.
Great. Any final question for Flora? Oh, okay, we have one. Did you get that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. That was very, thank you, Alex, I'm guessing. So this term dirty products for a new era, we basically saw this on a post on Xiaohongshu of someone who was like, just like, there was a post on AI slop and someone was like, oh, these are dirty products for the new era. And this phrase kind of like stuck with us because yeah, essentially like the software that we made is kind of a software that turns human actions into bots. You're turning humans into bots. Like that's really what we're doing. And it's dirty in a way because you're playing the games of yeah, you're playing the engagement metric game of the internet. And at the same time, it completely, well, the aim is to subvert this relationship to power. And essentially to survive by playing the rules that you're given, and these are currently the rules that we're handed. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks very much, Flora. I guess it's quite late for you right now. So have a good rest of the evening, and thanks very much for your amazing presentation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.
So we now are seamlessly, when I can just find my cursor.
Ricky Harriot is a creative director and designer with 10 plus years experience in garment design, brand building, and creative leadership. Most recently, Ricky has led London-based brand Service from launch to critical and commercial success, showing at London Fashion Week and securing placement in Essence, Selfridges, and H. Lorenzo. Ricky Harriot is a creative director and designer with 10 plus years experience in garment design, brand building, and creative leadership.
Okay, so please welcome Ricky.
Hello. Oh. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Blake. Okay, so this is going to be a kind of conversation. I have a set of questions, but also if anyone has any questions, please just feel free to jump in. So I guess like as a good starting question, I was wondering if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about your kind of background and sort of how you, how the kind of journey
How
unfolded.
I came to exist.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Tottenham in North London. That's where I grew up. that's where I somehow found myself back. And I guess in terms of my career trajectory, as a kid, I was obsessed with video games, anime, comic books, and I was consistently drawing. I kind of got my start drawing like Dragon Ball Z characters. That was like my first thing. And then that evolved into me starting to try to redesign their costumes. Same with video games, always the girl characters, Chun-Li, Nina from Tekken, and I would redesign their costumes. And when I was at school, that caught a lot of attention, and I started to design clothes for the girls in the class. And it was even in that moment, from like the age of like 12, I started to see the beauty in like how designing something for someone could make them feel. And that I found very interesting from a young age. And where I grew up, no one was telling you about being a fashion designer. You grew up, you got a job, and you bought a house. That was the ambition. But my mum, weirdly enough, was like, you know, you can do this. Like, you'd be really good at it. And I was like, yeah, maybe. Neither of us had a clue of how that worked. But eventually I went to study, and then I graduated, worked for free for a couple years here and there interning, realized I could not afford my rent by doing that, so I worked in like luxury retail. But whilst I was doing that, luxury retail was, weirdly enough, the biggest education. In the stores I was working in, Miu Miu, Chrome Hearts, I saw what people wanted, how the clothes would make them feel. And my clients became almost like my, I would just absorb all of their, won't wear this, love this makes me feel good. So I actually learned just as much at working in retail as I did at university, even maybe more so in some aspects. And so what I then started doing, believing I could do this, I started to like sew at night, do my day job, and just make clothes. So I launched my own little project, Wesley Harriot, which is my middle and last name, and I started making clothes under that to just kind of get my expression out there. That led to me winning a competition with ASOS. It was like the Fashion Discovery Prize, and I went in and pitched to all these scary editors, and somehow won. I'm basically running through my life, so this is like a long period of time. And then I used that investment because it came with like a prize fund. So up until then, I was doing it for my salary. Then I got this prize fund, and then I used that straight back into my work. And I got to do, does anyone know V-Files? It's like a New York collective that kind of support designers are the best. I applied for that many times to no success. But this one year I did get in, and that pretty much changed my life. That visibility, that opportunity, forever grateful to them. And then some celebrities came, and then some stockists came, and then I got a job at Vetements, which some would say, like, I was doing my own thing, why would you go and do that? But at that time, that was my brand. I was obsessed with it. Emails in my inbox of the rejections every time I applied. And then I got a job there, so I was there for a year. And then I left and started service, got hired to start service. So that's a very short form window into kind of my trajectory.
Yeah, and I guess like off the back of that, the question I have is really around, I guess, your reasons for starting service, and sort of was it something that was very like a desire in yourself, or was it something that you, through the experience that you had, you identified that something, maybe there was a kind of gap or something that was missing in terms of the kinds of fashion collections, etc., garments that were being kind of, I guess like images that were being kind of produced?
Yeah, so speaking conceptually to service, the reason why it's even called service is going back a little bit to when I talk about like the female characters, and I've always been obsessed with the female image and how to empower it rather than sexualize it. That's where I think the relationship between the characters came, because they were always so empowered and tough and cool. And I think me as a designer, I feel really passionate about the art of protecting and being of service. So the name literally comes from the idea of being of service to the female form. And that's kind of what I want. Service and beyond, I want my trajectory to always be rooted in being at service to my client, to the woman, to whoever consumes my designs. And I think as a man in fashion, I'm really conscious that I think a lot of the time in fashion, when we say powerful, we actually mean sexy. And I really wanted to question that and be like, how can I design clothing that there is functionality that gives her choice over what she exposes? So a lot of the garments you can change or alter, close, expose. I was really interested in a brand that actually gave some agency back to the wearer. So that was kind of the initial intentions with service.
Yeah, because there's a number of terms that seem to sort of it's be incredibly important to service, and I mean I've just wrote down a few of them. So like movement, ritual, choice. But I guess like this question of like protection as well, and sort of power, or I guess could you sort of talk a little bit more about those and sort of how they manifest then in garments themselves, but also sort of more broadly the brand itself and how the brand communicates, and sort of I mean I've got a later question around sort of like world building, and I guess it's like how do these terms or key principles, how do they sort of like manifest in the collections and in the way that the brand sort of communicates and presents itself?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm like a garment nerd, so like it's funny when I do like buying appointments, it takes so long to explain like every facet of one of our garments, because there are always little nuances and things you can do with them to kind of communicate this ethos of service. For example, it can be as little as with our trench coats. They have lots of little incisions in them, so you can belt the jacket like 6 different ways. Even that notion of someone taking the garment home and being like, I'm going to wear it like this today. I'm going to do it like this today. I love that sense that something that comes from us then truly becomes yours in the way you choose to experience it. There are little things like every jacket has a zip in the back of the neck, so if you have long hair, you can style it through. There's pieces where you can change the silhouette with different functions. I think, and maybe you'll agree or you don't, a lot of functionality and utility gets given to menswear. And I'm like, women want pockets too. Like, it's as simple as that. I think it's really, for lack of a better word, it can be a little ignorant to assume that those sorts of functions and end uses can be reserved for a specific gender. So I think we approach it a lot in the garments. A lot of the sensibility of service comes into the garments, but then in the visual, if you look at any of our shows or our shoots, that woman looks tough, and she looks, you don't mess with that lady, and that can be read as hot if you choose to, but I like to send the woman out in the street in a visual that's no one can mess with her, but she might let you. And I love that.
Yeah, I guess my next question is really about the kind of changing nature of fashion, I guess, like especially the fashion industry over the period that you've been kind of working. I guess like we've seen like the fashion industry of like fashion brands, etc., like becoming increase their sort of cultural and economic power as a kind of thing it seems to have expanded massively. I mean, it just like recently LVMH was kind of identified as the sort of most the kind of the biggest company in Europe. Novo Nordisk, the pharmaceutical company who produces Ozempic, they LVMH toppled them recently as the kind of most profitable or kind of the biggest company in Europe. And so, you know, like I guess like the kind of that kind of economic and cultural sort of power of fashion seems to have, or the way in which it's kind of seeped into so many other kinds of areas of cultural and economic kind of life, as certainly over the last 10 years, as we've seen that kind of intensify. So so I was kind of curious in terms of like how have you experienced that kind of that massive cultural and economic dominance or sort of power of kind of fashion?
That's a big question. So I guess as I'm 100 years old, fashion has changed a lot since I've been working in it. And I guess I can speak to the changes that I feel have kind of impacted my practice the most.
Yeah.
I think that, so if you think, and for you guys it may be a lot longer, but for me it doesn't feel so long. The first live streamed show, I believe, on the internet was the Alexander McQueen show in 2009. That was the first time you could watch a show on the internet. And since then, if we fast forward to today, the globalization of fashion, I grew up having to discover it, look for it, dig for it. I used to go and buy, do you remember there was a magazine, it was a Japanese magazine called Fruits and Tune. They were like street fashion magazines. I used to save up my money and go and buy them to like just discover. And now it's just so everywhere all the time, and I think that's impacted not only how much we're consuming of fashion visually, but also it's impacted, I guess, how we dictate our own style and wants from fashion. Everything's so global now, so we're kind of not discovering, we're more force-fed and trying to create niche and trying to create a narrative that feels special and individualistic in a space where there's so much all the time. That is the biggest shift for me. And that has definitely made me design differently. And question, who is this for? Why does anyone need this? So yeah.
Because I guess like one of the kind of second questions I have off the back of this is to do with, like, I guess like part of that is how fashion brands have sort of become like media platforms in a lot of ways. And so I guess, and obviously, you know, we're a fashion media and communication course. So I guess I was curious in terms of like, how has that, the importance of media and communication and producing content that is then going to circulate on platforms, or like how has that kind of affected your, I guess, like design process? So are you, when you're designing something, are you also thinking about, like how it is going to circulate in the kind of world? I say, like, I remember this. I remember this video of a kind of behind the scenes of Virgil, one of Virgil's shows or collections for LVMH, and there was a certain thing where they were trying sort of like they were doing something very early on in the process, and he said this kind of amazing, I mean, incredibly like profound or whatever statement. And he said very casually, he was like, he was looking at a kind of garment or producing something, and he realized that the way in which we consume clothes now is from a certain distance, which is principally the kind of distance that a garment or whatever is shot, and then how we view it on our phones or whatever it is. So he's saying, like, the moment that he realized that, then his relationship to the details of garments changed significantly, and he would think much more graphically in terms of like, is that detail, is it going to is someone going to be able to see it, or even sort of identify it in some way, like at the distance that he was talking about? I mean, and I was just like, it seemed like really profound understanding of this kind of recognition of the shift, or the importance of like how a garment is kind of presented and where it's being presented. So I was kind of curious in terms of like with your kind of design process, like how has this kind of the importance of communication and media, whatever, in the operation of a brand, has that changed your design process, even when you're actually working on the level of sort of like designing a garment and thinking about the pockets or thinking about some aspect of...
Yes and no. Maybe I'm a bit like anti it all, in the sense that the garment, when it comes to the garment itself, I think a lot still just about the end use. I think a lot about how it can be enjoyed in real life, how it can create the image in real life. I think where I maybe have learned and adapted a little bit. So if I post something like on Instagram, for example, I find the most traction I will get is when I do something that is behind the scenes, process based, or just a bit more lo-fi. I find that in a world where we are overwhelmed by glossy content, all of the beauty, all of the things, all of the choice, when there is a hint of reality shining through, I think people cling on to that. I think that there is a section of the internet or the world that is really looking for something to grab onto and that feels tangible. So I definitely try to make sure I have, as much as we have these amazing, gorgeous shows that we've done, I really like to try and bring people in on a more personal level, whereas I think, in the past that's a bit of a dirty word to like how it was made. Like you don't show how it was made, but I think there's so much beauty in grounding where everything's up here. Being a bit more grounded, I think, creates a nice tension between the gloss and the realisticness. So that's probably my biggest adaptation. Maybe I'm doing something that's kind of counter that, but I think it serves a better purpose, if that makes any sense.
I'd also just, this is me in teacher mode here, but take note of the presenting your kind of process. I know sometimes, because we always, Jen and myself always like bang on, document everything, present your process, whatever. So, and sometimes we get a little bit of pushback. So take note.
So important.
I guess following on from that, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, and especially when you were talking about the kind of these characters. Again, I guess like another thing that has kind of a term and has become increasingly kind of important is this kind of notion of like world building and brands as kind of world builders. And I was just obviously we're going to show the video shortly, but Demna's soft launch of his new collection for Gucci with these kind of photo series of archetypes or characters, and the kind of short film, which I say we're going to kind of show shortly. But I kind of wanted to ask about the role of world building in your kind of process, and sort of how important that is, or how, I guess, like conscious of that term are you when you're sort of building something? I mean, when you talked about earlier your kind of history or whatever, this idea of sort of like creating characters or I think there's something super interesting in this idea of like characters and how that plays a part.
Yeah, no, for sure. World building in any creative outlet, I think, is really important because that's what brings people in. For me, everything is kind of a fantasy based on reality. I find so much beauty in, the Buzz show, for example, that was literally inspired by I take the bus everywhere, and I sketch on the bus, and I look at people and they think I'm crazy because I'm like, but I think, you know, there's something really beautiful in creating a world that people can kind of see themselves in. So with the collections, particularly this one that's on the screen, every look is inspired by something that I can see. And I think when you create a mirror, like a fantasy mirror, that people can then look in and see themselves, that creates a unspoken relationship between you and the consumer or the person you're showing your work to, because you're inviting them in. You're saying like, come on in, like this can be for you. And with Service, we wanted to intercept different women at different stages of their life, age, size. So creating a world for them that's based on a world that they already live in felt quite cool and interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was struck seeing the video, and yeah, just how it just reminded me of like points where you are in some like whatever situation, like you're on the bus or whatever, and you just see someone walk by you, and you like instantly kind of start to imagine like them as this character and like what their lives would be like,
where
or
they
whatever.
going, who are they,
it's kind of I mean, I guess like do you again, because I think like this kind of question of like world building has become increasingly important and has become a kind of dominant strategy or kind of approach for both for kind of fashion brands, but I mean more broadly kind of creative outputs. I mean, think like K-pop groups as an example of kind of like masters of kind of world building various ways. I was wondering if there's any sort of have you come across, or have you sort of aware or conscious of the kind of risks or the drawbacks or the issues with world building? Like, are there any kind of things that, I mean, say for instance, like when you're building a collection, like are you ever kind of conscious of it's like getting too much into the kind of world building and less about the sort of garments themselves? I was just thinking of like Demner's often criticized for like his class as this great like world builder, but sometimes sort of criticized for the kind of gimmickry and sort of not the focus on the actual kind of clothes themselves. So I was kind of curious, like, are there any sort of like drawbacks to this increasing importance of kind of world building as part of it?
I think the clothing will always come first, especially in my practice, because I think at the end of the day I have a duty of care to produce something that's worth that price tag and worth that that commitment to purchase. I guess the drawbacks I feel is any sense of like alienation. I don't like, of course, like there are people that will be like, that's not for me, and that's okay if you feel that way. Let's have that conversation. But I obviously, on a personal level, like to try and bring as many people into the world as possible. So I definitely find challenge in making sure there's enough for as many people as possible to grab onto. But I don't see necessarily drawbacks in world building, because I think when I was growing up, I grew up in a time of fashion where there was so much subculture. And it's interesting, in the previous conversation that was being had, there was that talk of like BTS and the fandom there, and Blackpink and the fandom there. I almost feel like sometimes that subcultural attitude towards clothing has moved over to music. And whereas I want to be inclusive in my approach to fashion, I do think we are all, and this is going to sound very emotionally driven, but we're all looking for somewhere to go. And how many people go there is down to them, but I think that there is something really beautiful in creating a space in which people feel that they can be understood in. So I don't see drawbacks in that.
Again, like just circling back to this kind of question of characters, I guess, like, do you have in like either for the collection of the brand as a whole, maybe, or in individual collections, do you have a very precise type of character that you are constructing, or that you have in mind, that you then construct collections or garments for? Like, and if so, maybe could you like talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think dependent on the theme of the collection, that can kind of change a little bit. But she's consistent. She's always strong. I think my image is always a strong one. But when we're developing the collections, the characters kind of come out and it's like, it can be frustrating for everyone around in the studio, but I'll be like, where is she going? What's she doing in that? Like, what's her intention? I think when I'm developing a garment or an outfit, constantly asking, where does she go in this? Who does she wish to be in this? Is she going to work? Is she going on a date? Is she storming out of somewhere? Like, there has to be a reason for this outfit to kind of exist. So the character building kind of comes from what we want the garment to mean in when it enters the world. But there's always a consistency, I think, in what the servicewoman represents. There was a really cool instance, actually. We had a sample sale a couple years ago or a year ago, and I saw this thing happen that I was really proud of. A bunch of people came, which was great. But there was different kinds of women coming for different kinds of products. Right. So like we had a certain girl buying like the hoodies, the sweatpants, those more comfy items. And then we had a very specific kind of woman who was coming to buy like the tailoring. And then you kind of saw those characters you're trying to like communicate to actually coming for those things. And it was in that moment I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Because I got to kind of like witness it. So yeah, the characters always come out through the intention of the garment.
I'm reminded of, I hope she won't mind, Alex at a workshop that we did a few years ago, last year maybe, where she we were talking about world building, and she introduced this, I guess like a method that fiction writers use, or typically kind of use, where when they're developing a character, I think the thing was sort of like, can you identify, I mean, say like, I'll just say 100, but like 100 habits that this character will have in their life, that do in their life. And if you can sort of do that, if you can imagine someone so much to that level of detail, then maybe that character is worth including in the story. That's really cool. So I think maybe there's a kind of parallel there. I guess like, I mean, I guess with this kind of, when you were talking about this kind of collection of characters that you maybe experienced in the sample sale, I guess like, is that something that then, when it comes to, I'm just seeing here, the kind of a runway show or something like that, I mean, like, do you see that as then an opportunity to present not just the collection of clothes, but almost like a collection of characters that kind of play out? I mean, it seems like the shows themselves, and most recently you had an event at Machine A where you kind of constructed this kind of like an office kind of
dystopian call center.
That was it. Sorry. I mean, I think it seems that you're very, very in those instances you're really like building some kind of world. So as maybe like, can you sort of talk a little bit about the runway shows or these kinds of installations, like what's the process with that?
So with the runway shows, which are like prepping a show, some people hate it. I love it. It's my favorite. Like, you don't really sleep. There's tons of work to do. But it's just so much fun because you kind of see the story like coming to life slowly. And with I've worked with some incredible casting directors, Roxanne Dia, Madeline Osterly, and they both really understood how important to me that the casting has to look like the world I'm living in. So some of the people in the shows, you'll see them in all the shows, or some of them are my friends. Like my best friend walks every show, and her mum, that's her mum there, walking the show. So it's really important to me that not only do we like create the image with some of the most incredible models, but we also inject some people that actually mean something to me. So it really is real. So that's really important. And I guess in that, with the sets and the spaces we choose, like this is at the top of the BT Tower. We did the show before this was on the buses, and then I was like, so right, we've gone to work on the ground, let's be in the sky. So it's kind of like that high-low, like everything has a reason, but yeah, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
When you said we'll have a conversation,
yes,
it was partly they'll be bored of me speaking. So maybe the kind of last question I have really is to come back to the kind of themes of the summit. We've kind of repeatedly told about this kind of like crisis in luxury fashion, and I guess like what for you does kind of luxury mean, and maybe also sort of like, do you see the work that you're doing as luxury? Because I think I guess the other thing with this is often when we are told like, certainly like luxury fashion, that's immediately assumed that that's a good, like luxury fashion is the highest thing that everyone kind of is aspiring to in some form. But I wonder with service do you even see service as a kind of luxury brand in that sense? So it's kind of two parts. Like, do you see service as a luxury brand? And then also the second part, like what does then luxury sort of mean for you? And like in 2025,
so I think I'm really realistic in the sense that the clothing is expensive, and some clothing is really expensive. I think there's a lot of luxury in the craftsmanship that goes into the clothing. I think today the definition of a luxury brand, I think, gets kind of reserved a lot for those really big houses.
I was just saying, this is a side. I know in the Highsnobiety report that Jen and myself was referring to, I mean, I think it's funny. In that, it kind of griped me a little bit because they had the term that said like true luxury, and they referring to Gucci, Hermes, LVMH. Yes. And I was like, that's a really weird. Like I sort of was like, what? Like yeah. But anyway, I was like,
But this is the thing. I think luxury means different things to different people. Do I think that we create products with luxury sensibility in the way we make them and conceive them? Yes, I do. I feel like that label luxury brand is something that's kind of given to you in some context, if that makes sense. But no, there is definitely some luxury in the things we're making. What is luxury to me? I think freedom. I think the freedom to express ourselves, the freedom to travel, the freedom to, there's so much freedom that I don't take for granted. And I think we're actually living in a time where certain freedoms can be questioned. So even more so, the freedom to exist in my own self and do the things I want to do, that's something I don't take for granted at all. So maybe I should have had an answer where my biggest luxury was associated with clothing. But I guess I make clothing in essence to create a sense of freedom for the women that wear it. So freedom's really important to me.
That's great. I mean, I think it's like super interesting that both speakers, when we were sort of talking about luxury, like Flora referred to it in terms of like agency, and you referred to in terms of freedom. There's something very sort of interesting about that sort of
Oh,
No,
no.
no, no, no.
No, I was going to say, I think it's really funny, like, obviously, after the pandemic as well, I think that there was a shift in our priorities. Like, even me, myself, I'm in the business of making clothing, and my God, I love clothing and have far too much of it. But the things that I really like, going somewhere, traveling somewhere, investing time with my friends, it's funny, I think a lot of our mindsets have shifted into time. That's become really important to us. So I don't know what that means for my work, but yeah, I think that that's an important.
But I guess I was thinking like you can, I mean, I was thinking that like the idea of like a garment or wearing something as part of some incredibly meaningful or memorable moment is like, that is really important, right? And that's like part of that construction of that memory or that experience, etc. So like it may not be necessarily the garment itself that is the luxury thing. It's the fact that it kind of facilitates or is part of something much greater, right? Which I think maybe is a much healthier way to understand fashion more broadly, maybe.
No, absolutely. I think one of my favorite things in the world is when someone has come to me and been like, I felt spectacular in this moment in my life wearing this thing. It's funny when I have like celebrities wear stuff, that's incredible and we love those moments, but it's when someone in their real life has like an experience in something you created, that's really beautiful. And I also really want people to hold on to like some of these garments for as long as possible. I think wardrobe sustainability is incredibly important, so I always make clothing with the intention of someone pulling that tailored blazer out 10 years down the line and being like, I still love this thing. So yeah,
great. Cool. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank
you guys.
Does anyone have, we've got a few, well, what is the time? Oh, okay, we've got a few minutes. Does anyone have any questions for Ricky? You were nodding no. Very firmly no. Okay, so there's a no there. Okay, any takers? No. Yeah. Oh. Okay. We'll go Charlie at the back, and then. So.
Oh, okay. Yes, the bus show. I literally travel on the bus every day, and that's where I do a lot of my research. And I'm kind of obsessed with people and just seeing how they navigate. And I guess I make up little stories about who they are, where they're going. So I kind of wanted to kind of just create that experience for the show. Like my experience can then be a shared experience. Also, something kind of jokes about sitting a bunch of editors on a London double-decker bus. Like, I found that, like, you know.
I was trying to, when I was seeing the video, I was, like, looking at how people were, like, trying to film it in some way. And it was like, their bodies were, like,
and it
distorted in incredible ways.
Exactly, and it became really real because how many times have we been like this on the train with our phones? Like the actual like show itself kind of became like commuting to work because I don't think anyone was comfortable. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to again take a reality and create a fantasy from it, and I think this is probably one of the things I'm proudest of. Yeah, we had 4 buses. All the guests sat inside, and you've not lived until you've like coerced 30 models into taking double-decker stairs in like ridiculous hills. They were incredible. But yeah, no, it was an incredible experience.
Oh, and first of all, I love your design. That was amazing.
Thank you so much.
And I have a question, like it's a little bit personal, but I want to know like how you get like inspiration for like each like runway show or like your like a collection. Do you get it maybe like from Instagram or like TikTok? Will you like scrolling like Instagram or TikTok like getting some like inspiration or some like just like click idea of how you're gonna do for your next show or something like that?
So the inspiration for like collections and shows, that can kind of start with just kind of something that's on my mind. I think the internet is kind of my escapism place. Like TikTok is my like before bed treat. So
Isn't that the opposite of what they
yeah,
advise you?
no,
That's
it's terrible.
Don't go on TikTok before you.
Yeah. I give myself timers and I'm like, that's enough.
Brian.
But no, I guess with the shows and the collections, it's more of something that's like on my mind or kind of something I want to share with people. Like the collection we did in the BT Tower, I was thinking a lot about our overconsumption of communication, hence the venue. So everything kind of starts with just where I'm at, and I kind of hold on a lot to my female friends, and I collaborate a lot with the females I work with, and kind of, how do you feel? What do you want to see? I take a lot of, as a man, I don't think it's my sole job to tell the story of women, so I rely a lot on the women in my life to kind of steer me in the right direction for giving a story to women. I hope that answered the question.
Okay. So my question is, with social media, as you've mentioned, constantly feeding us with different fashion content, how do you manage to stay creative and innovative? And do you ever have creative blocks? If so, how do you deal with them?
Yes, I have creative blocks all the time. There are some days where I do not have it.
Some days that you don't have creative blocks.
I know. I know. Occasionally, I can come up with something.
Those days are really like, okay, I've got to get the collection done today.
Literally, today's the day. No, some days I just don't feel like I have it creatively. And my best friend, we have this like thing we say where we're like, we'll try again tomorrow. So I think all of us as creatives, I think it's really important to give yourself the agency, that word again, the agency to have a bad day. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have the answers all the time. In terms of being able, like social media and stuff like that, I think I try to consume social media as a fan. I love fashion outside of I think who I am in fashion and who I am as a fan of fashion are very different. So I try to keep social media as a part of my own personal fandom, because I think if I use social media as a mirror into what I should be doing or could be doing, that's overwhelming and crippling, and we should never be using the internet as a mirror into what we could be. So I try to really separate, I think, the facets of what I'm using things for. Did that answer the question? Cool.
Great. Oh, there's like a floodgate of questions now. I was just wrapped through.
Oh, I love your skirt.
Thank you.
Good choice.
Thank you.
That was the question.
Yeah, and we're done.
So when you're creating your brand, how do you stay true to yourself and your vision and what you want the brand to be when like there's kind of an influx of these micro trends? Do you think like your interest in people and women and everything, does that kind of lend to that?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think my interest in like the world around me kind of, I don't really like trends. It's funny, like you come up in trend pages sometimes, like your work does it. I'm like, I've been doing that for years. And that's because I think where I'm so rooted in the world around me, it kind of negates the need to try and follow what I think could be next. And I'm always interested for sure. Like I'm interested when I start to see like something starting to creep. Like I remember when I started to see like flip-flops on people, and I was like, oh, that's coming back. And then it's kind of blew up again. Could we have developed a flip-flop? Sure. Do I want to? No. Like it's not serving, I think, the narrative of the world I want to create if I start trying to lean into what I think is hot right now.
What people buy.
Yeah, I think being consistent is really key in all of our practices, because in the end, people will catch up to you.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it wasn't for them. So that's okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we're going to take a break now. So we'll be back just after 4 o'clock for the screening of the new Gucci short film called The Tiger. Yeah, and then we have the last two speakers, Adam from International Magic and Charlie, who is in the corner. So yeah, so come back just after 4 for the screening, and then yeah, into more yapping. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you, guys.
So goes on, who sleeps outside? The soft seduction, a strong attraction, somewhere downtown.
Guarda che luna, guarda che mare, da questa notte senza te dovrò restare, folle d'amore, vorrei morire, mentre la luna di lassù mi sta a guardare, resta soltanto tutto il rimpianto.
Adam Rodgers is co-founder and creative director of International Magic, a futurist design studio creating unseen digital experiences for next-generation brands and innovators. Driven by new technology and a strong visual direction, the studio's primary focus is to create entertaining and innovative experiences with a positive impact. A collaborative, open, and research-driven approach has led to relationships with commercial and cultural pioneers including Maison Margiela, Nike, Martine Rose, Judy Chicago, FKA Twigs, 032C, Somerset House, Selfridges, Manchester International Festival, and London College of Fashion. Adam Rodgers is co-founder and creative director of International
Magic. We're going to do a very seamless switch between decks, and then so.
Driven by new technology.
Okay, enough of. Just if you weren't aware, that is Jenny from Blackpink, who has kindly delivered the bio intros. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Nice to see everyone. Thanks for having me, Daniel and Jen. So, I am Adam Rodgers, and this is a presentation I've been working on this week. I've been thinking a lot about the concept of luxury. It's absurd, it's kind of slippery, it's fragile, and it's kind of funny if you look at it sideways. So this is a collection of like observations, references from films, documentaries, mainly from popular culture, things that I've consumed in the last like 10, 15 years that are relevant. So here's International Magic's incomplete A to Z of luxury. So A is for absurd. Luxury is absurd. So I'm going to start with luxury's most absurd ancestor, Versailles. So the director, Sofia Coppola, made this film, Marie Antoinette, and there's a scene in it with a track from New Order, and it really captures this kind of aristocratic indulgence and opulence of Versailles. Here's a little clip. Quite quiet. Thanks. Yeah, so like ever since the 18th century in Versailles, there's always been this kind of moral suspicion surrounding luxury. So various different philosophers had various different ideas of the consequences of luxury, I suppose. Some of them considered it a really corrupting force, you know. It was like this moral rot that kind of softened people's heads and destabilized society and kind of distracted people from what they should be doing, you know, their duties, I guess. So then there was this like dichotomy between decadence and virtue, I suppose. Well, I guess like luxury was framed as decadence versus virtue. And there was some enlightened thinkers like Voltaire. So he argued luxury had economic benefits, which could obviously drive trade, it could drive craft, it could drive employment numbers. And this idea has kind of permeated throughout the years. You know, there's this tug of war between moral decline and economic growth. You know, there's the question is like luxury, is it uplifting society or is it corrupting it? You know, it's kind of both. That's the absurd beauty of capital and capitalism. It kind of never lets go. So this brings me to C. I know I missed B, but this is like incomplete. So just gloss over that. C is for cyberspace and capital. So luxury it's always been about more than objects. You know, it's basically a proxy for capital and capitalism. It's you know, the handbag, the watch, the car. These are all instruments of finance and social leverage. And through capital, luxury has kind of arrived into circulation via the internet or cyberspace, as it was originally known. And this has enabled like stock markets, IPOs, conglomerates, and they all run through this modern construct of capital. But, you know, this also contaminates luxury to an extent. So one of my favorite documentaries is by this guy, Adam Curtis. He's done this, it's really long actually. I watched it the other day and I had to skip through it because my attention span's terrible these days. But it's called Hypernormalization, and it shows how the internet became this kind of new arena for power in the early 80s. A place where like capital could exist more freely and kind of operate quicker than politics basically as well, you know. So this is where like the real world kind of got flattened into this invisible space and abstracted to a certain extent. So yeah, here's a clip from Hypernormalization by Adam Curtis.
By the middle of the 1980s, the banks were rising up and becoming ever more powerful in America. What had started 10 years before in New York, the idea that the financial system could run society, was spreading. But unlike older systems of power, it was mostly invisible. A writer called William Gibson tried to dramatize what was happening in a powerful, imaginative way in a series of novels. Gibson had noticed how the banks and the new corporations were beginning to link themselves together through computer systems. What they were creating was a series of giant networks of information that were invisible to ordinary people and to politicians. But those networks gave the corporations extraordinary new powers of control.
Good morning, Southwest Development. May I help you?
Gibson gave this new world a name. He called it cyberspace, and his novels described a future that was dangerous and frightening. Hackers could literally enter into cyberspace, and as they did, they travelled through systems that were so powerful that they could reach out and crush intruders by destroying their minds. In cyberspace, there were no laws and no politicians to protect you. Just raw, brutal, corporate power. But then, a strange thing happened. A new group of visionaries in America took Gibson's idea of a hidden, secret world and transformed it into something completely different. They turned it into a dream of a new utopia.
So, cyberspace or the internet then created this new territory where capital could essentially move faster than politics. So, luxury kind of slipped straight into that stream, I guess. The idea or the concept of luxury changed quite drastically around about that time. So D is for dupe. So this is you'll see this on TikTok a lot. There's a lot of like dupe compilations and that sort of thing, you know. So I find this kind of fascinating. The internet has turned luxury into a series of images, which are like endlessly remixable, and also like capital thrives on dupes as well. You know, selling these corporations, they don't care really whether people are buying the real or the fake. It's all marketing, you know. So these dupes are just like shadows of the real thing, kind of echoes of luxury. So this is. I wanted to show a clip here from this film called Gomorrah, but I couldn't download the actual film to get the clip, and it's not on YouTube, so I'll just explain it. So Gomorrah is a film about the Italian mafia set in Naples. The film was made in 2008 by Matteo Garrone, and it's about these two kind of warring factions of mafia, and one of the sections in the film was about these artisans in these small workshops who stitch these. They basically pitch for these large fashion houses, and there's multiple different workshops, and then the person that can deliver, or the workshop that can deliver the kind of the nicest object for the lowest price kind of wins the pitch and can then create for the brand and like roll out the production. But then all of the other duplications that have been created then becomes the black market, you know. So it's the same people, it's the same hands making the all these products, you know. So I find that quite interesting. I don't have the clip, but I'm going to move on to E. E is for empty. So when you strip the aura away from luxury, like what's left is like nothing but signal without the substance. So like even the real thing can feel empty, which I find interesting. This is another clip from a Sofia Coppola film, The Bling Ring, which I find hilarious, where these teenagers like raid these celebrity closets and not for like need. They didn't need the clothes, you know. They're just doing it for the image, on the gram. So this clip is actually taken from this special feature I found with Paris Hilton. She was one of the victims, and she talks about this group of kids who like robbed all of her luxury goods from her house.
So this is my shoe closet, where they filmed most of the scenes.
She likes shoes. Oh my god. Just mirrors. She likes herself. Oh my god.
And this is the jewelry closet where the bling ring stole all my jewelry.
Sweet. Guys, oh my god.
But when I saw what had happened in the robbery and came in here, this was all completely empty. They had emptied off every shelf and there was nothing left. They took over $2 million in jewelry, handbags, couture dresses, basically anything the designer that they could find. So this is my real closet where we keep all my designer clothes, handbags, jewelry. This is where the bling ring came in. They took every single designer couture dress they could find. Most robbers would just want money or jewelry, but with these kids, they just wanted everything they would see in the magazines.
It's so cute. Oh my god. Check it. Meow.
Like most robbers, I think when they come to a house, they wouldn't be taking these type of things. But with the bling ring, they knew about every designer label, anything that was either in fashion or it was really expensive, and they would steal it.
Oh my god, this is Balmain. So cute.
So yeah, they're stealing all this shit, not because they need it, but because the kind of symbol matters more than the thing. And then after this, Paris Hilton starts talking about the meaning behind the items, which have context for her and meaning for her, but obviously no context for the thieves. So like, I think what's also interesting here is that like pre-internet luxury was really mysterious. Ricky was talking a little bit about this earlier, but by like 2008, you know, teenagers could just find celebrity addresses on Google Maps, and the mystiques kind of collapsed in many ways. And now you have to engineer mystique, which is interesting. So F is for fragile. So luxury these days kind of, I guess it kind of masquerades as like eternal and indestructible, but something goes wrong, you know, and the entire thing can collapse. This is really cool. This is not really fashion related, but I wanted to show it anyway. It's a scene from The Triangle of Sadness, directed by Ruben Östlund, and it kind of shows how like absurd and fragile luxury and excess can be. I had to show that. So moving on to L for loud. So we've talked about luxury being kind of absurd. We've talked about it being copied and duped, empty and fragile. So that kind of raises the question, how the hell does luxury survive today? And one of the answers through codes. So luxury can communicate through signals, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet. But it's easy to misread some, these codes, or like speak the wrong language in the wrong room. Loud luxury is the obvious one, you know, big logos, big bags, like status you can spot a mile away, which works until you carry the wrong bag into the wrong room.
So, I hear you've made an enormous faux pas, and everyone's laughing up their sleeves about your date.
What? Why?
Why? Because she's brought a ludicrously capacious bag.
What?
What's even in there? Huh? Flat shoes for the subway? Her lunch pail? I mean, Greg, it's monstrous. It's gargantuan. You could take it camping. You could slide it across the floor after a bank job.
So, I think that's kind of the danger of loud luxury, I guess. You know, you can spend like a lot of money on stuff, but still be kind of roasted alive by people if you could take it into the wrong room. So these like loud signals are like really kind of risky, I guess, you know, in certain circles, because if luxury can shout, it can also whisper as well. So Q is for quiet. So sometimes the louder the price, the softer the signal as well. I find this fascinating as well because quiet luxury only works if you're fluent in the codes. Otherwise it looks like nothing at all. So that's one of the reasons I showed that Succession clip, because quiet luxury was quite abundant in that program. One fact that I really liked was that like super rich people don't wear jackets because they're never outside for long enough. This next clip, one of my favorite clips actually, because it shows like extreme subtlety surrounding status, like really microscopic signals bordering on psychopathic.
Is that a gram? New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this. That is really nice. Eggshell with Romalian type. What do you think?
Nice.
Jesus. That is really super. How'd a nitwit like you get so tasteful?
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
But wait, you ain't seen nothing yet. Raised lettering, pale nimbus, white.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
So my favorite part about that is his inside voice. So good. So T is for time. Ricky mentioned this earlier. I think this is like really, really important. So I guess like, in contrast to quiet, we now live in this world where everything has been accelerated, and no one really has the time